Because I've had people tell me that my Beta 500 RRS is not a dual sport bike. Well, hi guys, Lance here from the Rocky Mountain Life channel. Out here in late October, riding with Super Dave. And man, did we get lucky with the weather. It is beautiful. It's going to be about 60 degrees out here at this elevation. Right now in the morning, it's about 11 o'clock, there's no wind. I mean, the sky's gorgeous. Sun's out. It's just absolutely beautiful. This is an area that I believe is known as Rural Ridge. It's part of the same OHV area that is near Phantom Creek, where I rode with Super Dave last time, but a little more north, different section. It's not too far from Divide, Colorado. And I got a favor to ask of everybody here. I would like you guys to chime in and kind of give me your idea of what you would call a dual sport. I made a couple videos earlier this spring talking about what is the best dual sport, and I touched briefly on how you define dual sport, but I didn't really get much into it. And it's kind of been something I've been thinking about lately. I've been following a lot of Facebook posts. I'm in some dual sport Facebook groups and some off-road riding groups on Facebook. There's been a lot of threads and a lot of things I've been seeing from guys that are looking to buy their first dual sport. And it's been guys that have been road riding, or they're kind of new to motorcycles in general and they want a dual sport. I saw one yesterday, I think, of a guy that's moving from another state into my neck of the woods, and showed a picture of his bike and what it was, and he says, hey, I'm looking to meet people to ride with, and it's just kind of got me thinking about some stuff. So I would like to know how you guys, put it down in the comments below, how you guys define a dual sport bike. Because I've had people tell me that my Beta 500 RRS is not a dual sport bike. I've had some people tell me it's a race bike. I disagree with that. Doesn't have the suspension for racing, I think, personally. I mean, it would do the kind of racing I can handle. but for a professional rider that gets paid to race, I think they would prefer a race edition Beta. Something with different forks, different springs. This is sprung softer than those are, to make it more comfortable for what I would call dual sporting. So I'll start the whole thing here. I want you guys to write me a little comment. Try and be polite, guys. I don't need rudeness and trolls. That's just stupid and a waste of time. But I am interested in a genuine opinion, even if it's different than mine. But here's how I define a dual sport bike. And this is going to be kind of lame sounding, but that's just how I've always felt about it. To me, a dual sport bike is something that is capable of doing this sort of riding, off-road riding, those 50-inch wide ATV trails that you see in a lot of my videos. I'm not even going to say it has to be really good at doing that kind of stuff. It just has to be capable of doing it, and it needs to be road legal. So to me, that's what makes a dual sport bike. It needs the ground clearance to go over these types of things, and bumps, and decent tires to hook up decently in this kind of stuff. But then you also need to be road legal and allowed and legal to take it through town and run to the grocery store and things like that. To me, that's not a plated dirt bike. To me, a plated dirt bike, particularly here in Colorado, I could buy a dirt bike, a non-road legal dirt bike, but if I put a horn on it, headlight, tail light, mirror, then I can get it plated, even a 2-stroke. It doesn't even need turn signals in Colorado. You can do hand signals legally. Personally, I don't like that. I'm not sure that's just not something I prefer. That's one of the reasons I got this RRS model, because it had turn signals on it already, and I like that. But to me, that's a plated dirt bike. That's a dirt bike that you have altered slightly to make it road legal. Well, it then makes it a dual sport, in my opinion. But when I say dual sport, I want to state that that's how it comes from the factory. You buy it stock, bone stock, from the showroom floor, and it's road legal and capable of doing some trail riding. That's how I define a dual sport. So I'm curious to know what you guys think when I run into people at the gas station and I'm filling this up or whatever, and they're like, "Oh, that's not a dual sport, that's a race bike," or "That's a plated dirt bike." I even had one guy try and tell me this is a motocross bike that they put lights on. Motocross. There's no way this thing can handle a track very well. Not at a professional level. It's not meant to catch that much air, and it doesn't have that type of engine that's wound that tight. You know, this is a short shift, keep the revs lower, torque everywhere, but not high-end screaming, keep it wound out all day long power. That's what the 430 engine's for from Beta. That's what that one is the screamer for the 4-strokes. So I'm curious to know good, honest opinions from you guys on how you define a dual sport. What characteristics does the bike need to be a dual sport? So for me, a DRZ 400 is a dual sport. So is this Beta 500. But riding them is a completely different experience. This stock weighs 244 pounds. DRZ is what, 289 or something like that? I mean, it's quite a bit heavier. Might even be more than that. I think the Honda CRF 450L is like 289 dry. The motor is completely different between this and a DRZ 400. This is 480 cc's. DRZ's not. And the technology is different. This was fuel injected and more compact engine. You know, everything is much more modern in its styling and technology. Compression ratio is way higher, and it puts out a crap ton more power than a DRZ 400. So to me, getting on a DRZ 400 compared to this is slow and heavy. Springs are kind of crummy. They're not bad, but they're not as good as this Beta, in my opinion. At least on the couple of DRZs I've been on with stock springs. But to me, that's still a dual sport. A lot of people say, "Oh, get yourself a CRF 300 or a KLX 300." I've never ridden one of the new KLX 300s. I would like to try one, I think, one of these days. Hopefully I get an opportunity. So I'm curious to know why somebody would think that my bike is not a dual sport. What is it that it doesn't have that precludes it from being a dual sport? What is it that it does have that pushes it into a completely different category? And I just don't agree with the whole thing that, well, it's too light and too powerful for a dual sport. No. KTM's got their 500 EXE or EXW or whatever it is. I can't keep track of their acronyms or labels, but that's every bit as light as this Beta, and is generally considered the pinnacle, the top of the crop, the creme de la creme of the dual sport world. That's everybody's dream dual sport bike. So yeah, what is it that makes this bike not a dual sport if it's not a dual sport? I am curious to know what you guys would think of that and what your thoughts are. Respectful thoughts. Don't just tell me I'm an idiot. I already know I'm an idiot. I don't need a reminder. And I've never claimed to be a motorcycle expert. I'm a novice, intermediate motorcycle person. But you your comments down below, guys. I'd love to know. I do read my comments. I don't always respond to all of them. Sometimes I don't have anything I can think of that I could respond to it and feel like I'm adding to the conversation, you know. Sometimes they're good standalone thoughts. Sometimes they're trolls being rude. I tend to remove those just because there's just no point. Why would you take the time to type out something rude and demeaning about anything? I just don't understand how that's helpful to anybody. But I would like to know what your thoughts are on what is a dual sport. I think that's going to be the title of the video today. What is a dual sport? What does it need to have? Is it like me, where I just think it needs to have the road legal ability and still able to come out here and do this without much trouble? Now, start splitting hairs and getting into the nuances of different bikes. I agree that this Beta of mine is much more dirt oriented than a Honda CRF or a KLX 300 or something like that, or DRZ. They will have better road manners than this. This one's more comfortable, it's happier, it's built more for this sort of stuff. But that doesn't mean I can't ride it through town. I've done it a lot. And I do. And it's not overly uncomfortable. It's not really that, it's really not a whole lot worse than my KLR 650 was. I mean, so just because it's better on the dirt than on the pavement, I don't think disqualifies it from being a dual sport. I don't think that being better on the road and less capable in the dirt makes it a dual sport. To me, a dual sport is supposed to be sort of a 50-50 thing. And everybody knows, pays much attention to these sort of topics, but there's no unicorn bike, there's no perfect bike, there's no one size fits all, does everything amazing. It's just not the nature of motorcycle riding. So yeah, you know, some big touring bike like a Goldwing, to me is not a dual sport, even though you can technically ride it down dirt roads. But you couldn't really take it on something like this very well. So yeah, what's your comments, guys? What makes you think that a certain bike is a dual sport? What are the criteria you think a bike should have? I'd be curious to know. Because to me, my Beta here is a dual sport. But I have run into a number of people over the last 2 years since I've owned this thing that have told me it is not a dual sport bike. So I'm curious to know why. Because to me it is. It's just a little more dirt oriented than some of the other ones that we know as traditional dual sports. But it's still dual sport to me.